for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I listen to other lectures and podcasts pretty often, and one of the common themes I hear are people who left the faith, left Christianity. I heard one the other day that reminded me of some common themes that I've probably mentioned before a little bit, but I want to say a little more about. But like those itches I got to get scratched, and that's why I'm do a podcast. This podcast had two different people on it. One was still in the faith, one had left the faith. The one who had left the faith, I'm always interested to hear because I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm waiting for the thing or things that said, I discovered it. Jesus was never resurrected. I discovered it. The Gospels are false, and here's why. I'm waiting for this stuff all the time. And every single time I hear these kinds of podcasts, none of this stuff ever happens. It never, ever, ever, ever happens. I was listening to a video the other day. I'm going to probably do a whole podcast on it at some point, of a woman who was a well-known worship pastor, apparently, her and her husband, and they both now are atheists. They left the faith. And why? Because they went to some concentration camps, and they saw people who had killed people, and it really questioned everything they knew about God. This kind of stuff, and the point is, I guess where I'm going is, none of these reasons are ever, 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 ever good reasons to leave the faith. And the person in the back to the podcast example of the two people talking, the one who left the faith, when the host was asking him, so do you see these things as probable, things in miracles, or virgin birth, or resurrection, or something? And the person said, well, I used to think that, but now I think they're very improbable, very, very improbable indeed. And they start talking about probability for a long time. I want to say a couple words about that, and then something else about leaving the faith. One thing is, I hear this often with skeptics, atheists, Christians, or whatever, and even now the person who left the faith, because now they consider something improbable. Probability. I'm not going to go into probability theorems and so forth, but I wanted this to sink in for a second about one specific issue, and that is when we use the word probability and anything about God or miracle and so forth. Okay, something is probable, or forget the word probable if that scares you. Think of the word likely. Is it likely to have happened? Every single time you ask the question, is something likely to have happened, you assume something that we call background knowledge. Is it likely that my wife is going to come home soon? Yes, it is likely. It's likely because she texted me that and said she's going to bring some lunch food. So that is likely. So I have background knowledge. If I didn't have the background knowledge of a text from my wife, I would say it's still likely because I think she's done with her duties for the day or whatever her errands. What if I didn't know that information? I would say, well, then I don't know if it's likely or not likely. I'm completely neutral. The point is the background knowledge informs that, right? We all get that. Is it likely my kids are going to out of school today this afternoon? It's very likely they're going to get out of school. Why is that? Because I have background knowledge. That background knowledge matters a whole lot. When someone says a miracle, an act of God, is probable or improbable, they, in my experience, never ever use that correctly. Okay, so let me say ever. When you ask, is a miracle or a God act probable, you mean, is it likely that God did it? But that's not how atheists and skeptics use the term. Is it likely that God did it? What they mean is it likely that that event occurred from natural causes? Or is it likely that the laws of nature, what they would say, were violated and that event occurred? That is not the right question to ask, because that's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. The question they should be asking is that miracle likely if God exists? And that's why the background knowledge matters so much. I was speaking with an agnostic. He's almost an atheist. I think he's simmered down to an agnostic. Real nice guy. And he asked me about the virgin birth. Well, he said immaculate conception, but he didn't know that was different from the virgin birth. We were chatting about, we got that cleared up. And then I said, the virgin birth. He said, well, isn't that very improbable, isn't it? And I said, no, it's not improbable. It's impossible. And he made a shocked face at me, like he admitted it. I said, it's absolutely impossible. If you mean, is it improbable predicated upon naturalism? That is, if all that exists is matter and energy, that's it, and all that governs life are laws of physics, it's impossible for babies to be born when there's not an extra chromosome. Virgin birth is impossible if atheism is true. If naturalism is true, it's impossible. It's not improbable, it's impossible. Human babies must have 2 chromosomes. They have 2, XY, XX. Well, they have to. They have to. It is impossible for the virgin birth to occur in nature. So I own that. I said, absolutely. I said, but that's not the question. The question is naturalism true? If God exists, and he does, then the issue is it probable based on what we know about God and his character and how God interacts with the world? That's a very, very different question. Then the answer is, it's very probable God did it. It's very, very probable. This kind of virgin birth is a kind of thing God would have done. And it is the thing that, in fact, the early church said did occur. And it fits perfectly within the Christian worldview, and on and on and on it goes. So whenever you hear a person say, well, I think that stuff is improbable, please, I'm encouraging you to look past that statement. You're listening for background knowledge. You ask the person, are you an atheist? And if they go, yes, skeptic. Okay, forget it. If you don't know a label, I believe in something. Okay, fine. Let me ask it this way. Are you a naturalist? Do you believe that all exists is matter and energy? And if some version of that is yes, or they say some version of, I don't believe in a superior God, creator God, then that's the difference. You say, oh, then I'm with you. It's so improbable, I call it impossible. Miracles cannot happen. They might look at you crazy like my friend did to me. And they go, right, absolutely. That's not the question, though. The question is it likely that it happened since God exists? Predicated on the assumption that God exists. That's a very different question. In the Christian worldview, of course, this stuff makes it very probable. So you can't, when you become an atheist, when you're a Christian, you become an atheist, and you go, now I think those things are improbable. Of course you do. You're an atheist. But just go all in. Be honest. Say, it's impossible. They can say, Dave, oh no, something really weird could happen in the fluke of nature and a chromosome. No, it doesn't. Just call it what it is. It's impossible. It is impossible. Virgin birth never happened. It's all stupid. But if God does exist, and he does, then it's not unlikely whatsoever. If I use that about any human person whatsoever, is it likely my wife is lying to me? It's very, very unlikely. What's the probability she's lying? It's very unlikely because I know her. I know her. So asking, is it likely a miracle occurred, depends on whether or not you know the person of whom you speak, which is God. And that's 3 persons and one being. I know that. Anyway, so I know God. Oh, that's very likely he did that. And that's what people do with probability. That's one thing that's very frustrating when you hear it, is they are assuming a worldview, a background knowledge that is radically different from a Christian. So we always have to talk about worldview, not miracles. If someone comes to you and says, do you think miracles are likely or not? My response is, since Christianity is true, I think miracles are very likely. But if naturalism were to be true, and it's not, it's false, then of course miracles are impossible, because everything's governed by the laws of nature. As a Christian, I know for a fact that God governs the universe through laws of nature and in his interaction with the universe. God can do whatever he wants. I can dip my hand into the fish bowl to touch the fish whenever I want to. It's my fish bowl. But in general, I let the fish bowl operate on the laws of gravity and the laws of whatever. Hey, let me take a quick break. Please listen carefully to these quick announcements. I'll be right back.
Do you know of any skeptics in your family, at work, or among your friends? Do you struggle with questions concerning the existence of God or the truth claims of Christianity? Has a skeptic ever challenged you with a difficult question concerning your faith? Then you need to buy Dr. Pendergrass's book, A Skeptic Challenges a Christian, on Amazon.com. You can get it in paperback or on Kindle or in audiobook form to listen to. A Skeptic Challenges a Christian is written unlike any other book. It's not boring and full of technical jargon. It reads like you're sitting down having a conversation. As one reviewer said, as a college student, I absolutely love this book. Dr. Pendergrass knows how to effectively answer a lot of the questions that my friends at school ask about my faith. This book is a great resource for theological debates and for my own personal growth. The arguments are clear and understandable. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who has questions about Christianity, wants to learn how to defend their faith, or even just wants a good read. Great book. Find out why it has a perfect 5-star rating on Amazon.com. A Skeptic Challenges a Christian. Buy your copies today. Ever wonder what God wants you to do with your money? Should I give it all away or save? What did the early church do with their money? In Dr. Pendergrass's book, Give It Away, Reflections on How Christians Use Money, you'll get 4 short, powerful lessons on what to do with money based on some key texts from the New Testament. This is a wonderful guide for study and reflection. It even comes with reflection questions that are perfect for small group discussions. Give It Away, Reflections on How Christians Use Money. Buy your copies today on Amazon.com. Do you like receiving a glimpse of the kingdom for free? Would you like to support what God is doing through these resources? Then please consider donating to David Pendergrass Ministries, Inc. today at davidpendergrass.com. There, you can also sign up to receive Dr. Pendergrass's free blog on a wide range of theological, biblical, and relationship issues. That's davidpendergrass.com.
Thank you for listening. Let's pick back up where we left off. When you listen carefully to what people say when they leave the faith, it always, in my experience, every time I've heard this ever, it always comes down to some emotional thing. People can't have a baby, they prayed for a baby. A relative died, they prayed for the person to be healed and didn't happen. There is always something deeply emotional and sad about it. And then looking backward, they'll tell this testimony, they'll tell their story about it, and then look backward and sound cerebral and cognitive. Well, now I consider these things improbable. Now, when I do my research, I realize that that's not why they left the faith. That's not why they left the faith. They should just own it. Just own it. I left the faith because I got sad. That's it. I left the faith because I got sad. That's it. I abandon beliefs when I get sad. I abandon things I hold valuable and cherished when I get sad. I change my beliefs. Sadness changes my mind. Sadness causes me to give up on deeply cherished held beliefs. That's what they should just say that. I left the faith because I got sad. Because that's what it is. But sadness isn't an argument. It's an emotion, and it's a powerful emotion. It's an important emotion. Good heavens, it's a very important emotion. But I've said once, I've said 1,000 times on these podcasts, the proper response to grief is not abandoning your faith. It's grieving. You need a therapist, a counselor, a support system. And many people who left the faith are sad because of something that didn't happen, sometimes because of their own sin, and they did not experience a community that supported them, and I gave them the freedom to feel the sadness. And that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I mean that. I've met those people who have left the faith because they were so hurt and burnt by people in the church. They thought they were going to get support, and they didn't get it. Now, in all fairness, sometimes they didn't get it because the people that they thought would support them, they don't know what to do in response either. Maybe the person was caught in an affair. Maybe they're addicted to some drugs, pornography, something, and they're scared. They don't know what to do, and so they don't hang out much like they used to. And the person perceives that as being judged and cut off. I know there's all kinds of reasons why people do what they do. But you left the faith because you got sad. You abandoned the belief in Jesus of Nazareth, his death and resurrection, because you had an emotional interaction with some news. It's not because something's improbable. It's not because you went and got a bunch of degrees in biblical studies and all this. It's not. So I want to encourage you, if you ever find yourself being sad about something, you find yourself tempted to leave the faith, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't. I'm going to have some other podcast on grieving and terrible things and so forth. But right now, my main point is don't do that. Please don't do that. Feel your emotions. Be sad. Wrestle with God. Tell him all your grief. Fine. But it's not the appropriate thing to say, I'm leaving. I'm out. I fade away. Why is that? Well, I got sad. And I stopped having beliefs when I get sad. I don't stop believing in my wife when I get sad. That's something she's done. My children don't cease to exist when they make me sad. My dogs don't make me cease to exist. God didn't cease to exist because you got sad. Christianity didn't become false because your emotions changed. The facts are still the facts, period. And that's exactly what we tell ourselves when we're going through some horrible hell on earth. That's exactly that's one of the many things we say to ourselves. Where is God? What's he doing? My emotional state doesn't change the fact that Jesus of Nazareth existed. He exists. He healed people. He forgave sins. He died on the cross. He's resurrected. These facts are facts. Now, I've got to process my emotions, period. I've got to get to the bottom of what I feel. That's what we should do. And not get bogged down in this improbable, probable nonsense or whatever. They're not even using the term correct anyway. But instead, deal with whatever it is that is hurting you. Don't give up. Be encouraged. It's very, very likely that this podcast is about to finish. It's very probable. Very, very probable. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. At Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, or at Glimpse the King, at Glimpse the King, and I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcast, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrassconsulting.com, davidpendergrassconsulting.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.